Welcome back or welcome to Sexy Business Podcast. I'm your host, Eisve, and today's theme is the most important work that we do outside of work. And for that, we have a wonderful guest, Nalani, who works with leaders, and she's an executive coach.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Happy to have you for one more episode.
Pleasure.
So we delved into the most common things that leaderships faced last time. And now I want to talk in general about your work because it's so profound and how you work helping people discover and learn about their emotional states.
Yeah.
And I do hear that a lot, that we start to feel needy once we start tapping into our emotions. But I really want to hear your point of view. How can we find the needs that are so human without feeling needy?
It's an interesting question about feeling needy, because in some ways I don't know what that means.
Ooh, interesting.
Because so let me define needs first, and then we can talk about being needy. When I think of needs, they are the core things that we all value as humans, and we can say that we all need as well. But of course, there's things like we need food and water and air, but we also have needs for love and appreciation and clarity, and needs for connection and community. There's all sorts of needs that some people are going to have a little bit more on one than the other at any given point in life. So there might be a season where someone's like, oh, I really have a strong need for connection right now. And then a different season of life, it might be like, actually, I need a lot of time on my own and I don't have as strong a need for being in connection and community. And so I really think of needs as the things that we value as humans.
I love you saying that because like where my question came from, and maybe it's like, that like in this podcast we talk about like spirituality and so on. And there's sometimes this sort of belief that we shouldn't need anything, even like love, like we have everything within ourselves. True, we do. But if I look at any little human being, which is a kid, we have needs. As you said, like, there are simple ones, water, food, shelter, but we need love. We need compassion. We need so many things to develop and grow as a human being. And I think one of the things that I see people like being very surprised when I say like, we need hugs. And they're like, oh, really? Yeah, like for survival, for learning.
Physical touch.
So I love that you described the needs as like something natural that we all need. So let's go there. Why people are so disconnected from their emotions, their emotional state, and how we turn and shift back in to rediscover our needs that are, as you said, natural to every human being.
I think it's a good connection to the idea of being needy, because so many of us are taught at a young age that if we speak up for wanting too many things, that then maybe we're needy. And that kind of inherently, for most of us, has meant that we didn't learn productive ways of first connecting to our needs and then also making requests around those needs.
Wow.
And so that's a model that's based in a body of work called Nonviolent Communication that I really love, that helps us build the vocabulary of feelings, of needs, and finding really productive ways of being in a relationship with other people and with ourselves, because we can meet our own needs. So that's an interesting part of this idea of being needy too, which is just because we've identified that we have a need doesn't inherently mean that we have to demand that someone else does something for us about it. Sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes maybe you make a request of someone and they say no. And so then we have to self-connect back and say, okay, if this need is that important to me, what am I going to do about that? Is there a way that I can meet this for myself? If not, is there a different request I want to make? Is of a different person? Do I stay in connection with the same person? So the idea of being needy, now that I'm now that we're talking about it, because I know I was like, I don't know what you mean.
But that's beautiful. That was actually a very beautiful reaction, because most people are like, it's like,
yeah.
it stops them in the track. Like,
well, and I think now that we're talking about it, the societal narrative of like someone is needy, I imagine probably comes from a place of when someone is speaking up for their needs in a way that that might skew toward making demands, of saying, you need to do this thing for me because I have this need. And that's a reason I love the work of nonviolent communication. It's often called NVC for short. It's not about making demands, it's about making requests. And that is the way that we build connection. That's the way that we build humanity and trust between ourselves and others, is making things requests, because if we're demanding them and someone feels like they can't say no, and then we make another demand and we make another demand, and then someone's like, oh, you're so needy. Versus if I said to you, would you be willing to change the start time of our recording today? Versus, I really need you to change the start time today. The second one, you might be more likely to be like, wow, Nalani is like really needy. The first one is like, oh, she's asking me a question, I'm allowed to say no. That's the definition of a request. Is that no is an acceptable answer.
Very, very, very interesting viewpoint. Instead of making demands, asking people. Would you say is similar how we should be looking at ourselves when we are connecting to our parts, instead of kind of like demanding us be in a certain way, and demanding us, like, I don't know, maybe like I'm scared of something, but I'm demanding myself to push through it because that's how I imagine it to be, instead of like kind of like looking back and like making a request of that little part. And maybe we can talk more of what parts are, because I think there are some people who have never heard about it.
Of course.
So what do you mean when you say that, like, we have parts of ourselves?
Yeah. So I'll give an example.
Yes.
So if I was to say, today I am really nervous to record this with you, I could also say, today I'm also really excited for my dinner plans. And I'm also really missing my daughter. And what else? But we'll stick with those three. Each of those, I said them in a way that I am, right? And that's a really common way of identifying with what we're feeling, saying, I am sad, I am annoyed. But the idea of parts is to acknowledge that we can feel all three, sometimes many more than three, things at the same time in our being. And so the small shift to start working with these parts of ourselves is to instead use the language, a part of me was feeling really nervous to record this today. And a part of me is missing my daughter. And a part of me is really excited for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
And just that subtle shift helps our brain and our heart and our body relate to what we're experiencing just a little bit differently, to say, it's not all of me. Not all of me is nervous. Not all of me is sad, but a part of me is. And so that turn to ourselves that you were saying of it's really about curiosity, of instead of, I shouldn't be feeling, I shouldn't be feeling nervous. That's often what we do. We say, I don't want to feel that. Let me go try to push that out of my mind, push it out of my heart. Don't want to feel it. And the analogy I like to use when we do that to parts, when we say, okay, I just don't want to feel that part of me, I want to be focused on this, is it's like taking a toddler, a young child, and like closing the door on them and saying, I see you're really angry right now, or you have big feelings, but like now is not the time. And for anyone that has kids, hopefully you haven't actually tried closing the door on your child, but if you think about what might happen, they would likely get bigger and bigger feelings, and they'd start banging on the door and want to come out, and they get louder. And that's exactly what happens inside of us. So especially for big emotions like anger, like fear, when a part of us is feeling those things and we try to shove it away and not feel it, it gets bigger and it gets bigger. And for some people, it might explode out at times when someone has rage that comes out, maybe directed at a person. that's a really common experience when we've been disconnected from that part and really trying to ignore it.
I connect to that like super much.
Yeah.
Because I used to have panic attacks a decade ago. And the least thing that I wanted to feel was a panic attack.
Of course.
And once I started treating it what you said, like I realized that like I have locked some of my emotions and they were just like, you don't see us, so we're gonna
find a way to come out.
Yeah, they're gonna just kick the door and be like, hey, we're here. So maybe you'll finally pay attention. And it took a long time for me to recalibrate with those parts and like because probably it happens depending on which environment we grow up at, that we learned this is good that I express into the world. And said like maybe neediness or something, or maybe I just expressed it in a way that like it didn't land well, because we're all learning, and communication is, I think, one of the hardest skills to learn. So probably we learned that like, oh, maybe I shouldn't express anger, or maybe I shouldn't express sadness, and it's different for every person. And then I think it's different for women and men, because there's a tendency as well.
When we carry those learnings with us, and so those parts that feel things, when we're young and we learn that, oh, it's not acceptable to express anger, especially for women, right? That part that feels anger gets shut away. And then there's consequences. There's a cost to that emotion being locked away. And that's kind of what you're describing, where it's going to find a way out at some point.
Do you think they always are finding their way out, or like we can literally like numb?
We can numb. That's addiction is one version of that. We can continue to numb it. I'd say when we numb, it's still finding ways to seep in. So for some people, the way that the parts will show up is a big explosion. Some people, it will just like slowly start to shape our behavior, how we spend our time, how we talk to people. It could be we get passive aggressive. It's a little different for everyone, but there are high energy and low energy impacts from those emotions that we shut away, definitely.
Okay. So how does one go about tapping into their parts? Like I have been through the process, and it's very interesting. I haven't covered like some parts of myself. I even gave the names because I was like, this is like, fun. Where before I would be like, like how you said, like, why am I this way? Where like, oh, okay, this part is doing their best job, like you're awesome, and I'm kind of like started seeing them and so on. But like, how does one tap into this and be like, okay, so it's not just me, there's little different segments of me. How do we do that?
So the first part is that language adjustment that I mentioned. So starting to practice when we notice something. I'm so annoyed that I missed my bus. Reframing to say, a part of me is really annoyed that I missed my bus. And sometimes when we do that, we also notice that there might be another part of us that's like, oh, but I get extra time with my podcasts. There might be something that feels different than that annoyance. And so the first step is acknowledging that language shift of being able to disidentify from the emotion and say, it's not all of me, it's part of me. A part of me is feeling annoyed that I missed my bus. A part of me is so angry that my CEO didn't show up to the meeting. A part of me cannot believe that my kid won't eat the dinner that they asked for. They asked for it and I made it. Like, I don't understand. So that's the first step. The next step is seeing what your relationship is with that part. So once you identify it, okay, a part of me is so angry with that person for showing up late to our meeting. The next is asking yourself, how do I feel toward that part right now? And sometimes you want to say, oh, I'm so annoyed at it for some reason. But sometimes, and this is often with more practice where we can get to in our relationship with ourselves, is we actually start to develop curiosity. We're saying, I'm really curious about that part and why it's feeling what it's feeling, and maybe even what it's trying to help me with. Because each part inside of us has a job, or it thinks it has a job. It has a role that it's taken on to help us, to
Mm-hmm.
help us achieve something, to protect us from feeling something. And so when we can get into curiosity to say, okay, that part of me that is really annoyed with that person that arrived late, really curious. And when we get into deeper work with a therapist or a coach or even a best friend or journaling, we can do this journaling where we can kind of ask ourselves questions and say, okay, how do I feel toward this part? I'm curious about it. You could start talking to the part. I know it kind of can sound funny to say I'm like talking to myself, but if it is a part of us, it has its own answers that aren't us.
Yeah.
And so to say, hey, can you tell me how you're feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And that part may say, I'm just like so annoyed. Like I really value people who are on time and it feels really disrespectful. And then you can ask a follow-up question and say, okay, so like what is it about being on time that feels really important to helping me do my job, helping me live my life? I want people to respect your time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can start to get to this place where we can see, oh, this part's actually trying to help me.
Yeah.
Even though that emotion, maybe I was annoyed at first of being like, ugh, can't we just move on?
Yeah.
Or whatever else our reaction is. But that type of dialogue with parts and doing it with journaling can be really effective. Take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. One side is you asking questions, the other side is the part. And you can ask a question and go back and forth and see what its answer is. It can take some practice because it can
Yeah.
feel funny sometimes to be like, well, I don't know what it has to say. It's just me. But if that is the place that you're at, getting back to, okay, a part of me, and creating that disidentification to then see if a dialogue can happen. That's kind of the more advanced level of this work.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like Inside Out movie, like realizing that like
Yep.
we have and way more than it's showed. Like,
Yeah.
and what you're mentioning, like talking to the part, to me, it was really hard when I found the parts. I was like, but they're no good, you know? They're like, if they're there, they're doing a crappy job.
So we'd bring you back to that second step, which how do
Yeah.
you feel toward your part?
I
You were like
know.
not curious.
That's where I started, yeah. And then when I spent time with them, I was like, wow, you know, I was like, this part of me who was, for example, the one that I found was like, is trying to be a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but she's just like, you know, dragging me towards the burnout. I'm like, I'm always just tired because she just wants to do everything and all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, but why? Why you, you know, like,
Yeah.
because she's just trying the best and she's always like overworked and overwhelmed because she's trying to do everything for me. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know, that's when I found like compassion and being super like thankful to that part. And then I found another part and another part and another part. And like my whole internal wall started building up and expanding.
Yeah.
And then I found the beauty in it.
Yeah.
And I found way more compassion because, for example, I would struggle every time if I had like a challenge with my health. Like it means I cannot perform and like, you know, I would feel really bad and it would be so hard for me to overcome.
Yeah.
Once I started the part work, I was like, it became beautiful in a way
Yeah.
because it becomes so expansive to see. I don't know, I call them little humans.
Some people call them characters.
Yeah, you know, but like, I don't know, like it's like having your internal like company and system working for you the best they can.
Yeah.
And finding that out, I think is really eye-opening and it changed the world
It's so beautiful.
internally but externally.
Well, and to connect it back to what we were talking about with needs and making requests of ourselves.
Yeah.
A really powerful way at the later stages of doing this work, and maybe you got to it, is once we're in relationship with them, we have that curiosity, we're understanding their role. We can get to the point where we can make requests and say, hey, I'm about to step into this really high stakes meeting and this perfectionist part, right? Like maybe you're like, I would rather it not be driving the bus for the next hour, even though a lot of my life, it takes over. And getting into conversation saying, would you be willing for the next hour to take a step back? And would you be willing to trust me that, I'm not 10 anymore. I don't need you to protect me in the way that maybe you think you need to.
Yeah.
And what if I came back and checked in after? And a lot of parts want, in the same way that we as humans want to be seen and heard and appreciated, our parts are little humans. And so finding that connection to say, would you be willing to step back? And I'll come back and check in after to see how that was for you. And if we do that, we have to come back because we have to keep building trust with them. That's a huge part of this inner work, is if we're going to open dialogue and they're going to be vulnerable with us to tell us what's happening for them inside of us, which is us. One time where we say, oh, we'll come back and chat, and we don't, could mean weeks, months, years of them not trusting us and not wanting to engage with us anymore.
Yeah. Interesting, right? Because it means we're building trust with ourselves internally.
Yes.
And this is what you mentioned. It was a very, very big part of me to go back to the parts that I didn't want to acknowledge and see.
Yeah.
That's where the problems probably come, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I know you're feeling this, but okay, I will come back to you in an hour or something, and I actually did that. And I was like, it, as you said, helped me ease up in the situations where maybe they would get super explosive and tense. And I was like, hey, I see you. And they're like, I don't need to bang on the door, as you said, because they see me, they take me together, and I'm there. So okay, checking in with yourself, acknowledging that there are parts, seeing them, keeping the promises that we're gonna check in, doing that. Anything else how we can move around the work with the parts? Or maybe what to do if you feel like, as you said, like it's strange, or I would even say, what if you feel really stupid talking to yourself?
Yeah.
Or is it another part that feels that way?
Probably, yes. It's another part that's judging. Yeah, of course. The analogy I would use, well, I guess there's two. One is, if your life and your inner thoughts and emotions are a bus, who is in the driver's seat? And at the end of the day, I think we can probably all agree that we want to be the ones in the driver's seat. Our conscious, authentic, most grounded self. We want to be the ones making our decisions in life. Whether we're leaders, whether we're parents, whether we're friends, family members, the person that we want to be and how we want to engage with the world. I think most of us can agree we would like that to be from a place of intention, where we get to choose and we're not just on autopilot.
Yeah.
And so this analogy of the bus, if you think of all the kids on the bus as all of your parts that are kind of like bringing along with you on the journey, there's times where different parts will step into the driver's seat. And it might feel weird to start to talk to them, but even just starting to think about this image of who is in the driver's seat in my life right now, is it? So if you're struggling to maybe think about this lens of talking to yourself and it feels weird, I'd encourage people to think about the analogy of your life being a bus. And I think we could probably all agree that we'd all like to have ourselves, our most grounded, intentional self, be the one driving. But there's always parts in us. Every single human has parts that will show up at different times. And so all of the people in the back of the bus, you can think of them as little kids maybe. I like to think of them as little chatty, quick kids that have a lot to say. They're in the back. That's our ideal, is that we ourselves are the ones who are making our decisions, moving our life forward, but other people have commentary about it who are also in the bus. If you're not yet comfortable with this idea of like, how do I talk to them? Think about the times where maybe you're booted out of the driver's seat and some of the other folks that have a lot to say, a lot of big emotions that are in the back of the bus come and take over. That maybe there's times where it can feel helpful to be like, oh, okay, there's this part that's really focused on perfectionism and I really need that right now. But there's also ways to still do that quality of work while being grounded in ourselves and have us still driving the bus. And so if you're not yet at the place of like, I want to go talk to parts, I'd encourage anyone to think about their life as this analogy of who is sitting in the driver's seat. And if you notice that it isn't you in your most grounded, intentional self, just notice, who is it? What do they care about? What are they focused on? And what maybe might be their blinders.
And something that comes from this very naturally, and I noticed that sometimes on kids as well, and that's what you mentioned, that like having the emotional vocabulary and building that. Sometimes like I would ask a person, oh, so how do you feel? And they're like, I don't know. I don't know. So who's driving the bus? I don't know. You know? And I do think it's a protective mechanism. We do know what we feel. And like, to me, usually it's like, oh, so where do you feel it? Like in the body. And that's something that you mentioned as well. Like we all have sensations, and that's maybe the starting point.
But we may not be able to access them yet.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So if we cannot access that, where is the starting point?
The starting point is,
that's like mind-blowing. I didn't know that.
Yes. That's the protective mechanism, and sometimes there's layers and layers. The first place to start is looking at inspiration. So it could be a list of emotions, a list of body sensations, to say, do any of these feel like something that feels familiar? Just to start building some recognition of like, oh, my body could feel tingly, or my body could feel cold, or it could feel, I could feel tight in my chest. Sometimes though that vocabulary isn't top of mind, and no one ever taught us that in school.
Yeah. So seeking like emotional vocabulary outside to trying to relate to that if you feel like I have no idea where I stand. Okay. Nalani, it has been a very interesting conversation. I think a lot of people will be opening their eyes, because I know it's not, at least maybe I don't hear about that often, for people to do the work like this and tapping into their inner worlds. So thanks a lot for sharing not only how that works, but also how they can start with, I would say, feeling more.
Yeah, just self-connecting.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening. Leave your comments below. If you feel like you want to ask something or share something, but you don't want to put it publicly, you can always send us a private message and we can read them. And yeah, if there's more questions for Nalani, maybe we can have her for one more episode.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for tuning in.